Hello and welcome to another SkaredCast battle report. Today we're playing 1500 points of Space Marines with a Knight against Dark Eldar null deployment. Let's get this party started. Today we're playing BAO Mission 1, which is Emperor's Will as primary. One objective has been placed here. One objective has been placed back here with the Thunderfire Cannon, and two modified Maelstrom objectives. Number 2 was placed over here, and number 1 was placed in said crater. I lost the roll to choose whether I could go first or second, and Evan, the protagonist this evening, decided to make me go first with my null deployment Dark Eldar army. So, I have deployed nothing. Now, how is that, do you say? Well, my 1500 point list consists of 3 different sources. I have a formation from the Coven detachment, which is the Scalpel Squadron, 2 units of 5 racks, with liquefy guns and venoms with dual cannons. Then I have a combined arms detachment of Dark Eldar. I have 3 units of 5 Kabalite warriors in venoms with dual cannons and blasters on the units, an Archon with a webway portal, a blaster unit of Trueborn in reserve, and I have, for fast attack, 2 Razorwing jet fighters and 1 Void Raven bomber. All stock except for lances on the Razorwings. And last but not least, I do have an allied detachment with an Autarch on a jet bike with a Banshee mask, a lance, haywire grenades, and 3 Eldar jet bikes. That is an objective secured unit, meaning I do not have to deploy anything. So that forced Evan to deploy blind. He's deployed 3 units identical of Space Marine bikes with 2 grav guns and combi grav on the sergeant. He has 2 chapter masters there and there. This guy has the Eternal Shield, Storm Shield, Power Fist, and this guy just has a Storm Shield, Power Fist, and no Eternal Shield. And of course, a Paladin Knight. Now, he is going to roll on the table to see if it's a really, really good Knight or a really, really crappy Knight. He rolled a 3. It is a regular, normal, run-of-the-mill Knight. He has bolstered this ruin here, and the Thunderfire Cannon is by the objective as well. So, it is on to Dark Eldar turn 1, and the Scalpel Squadron deep strikes automatically, making me not lose the game automatically. Okay. The first turn, the Scalpel Squadron deep struck. I was trying to get far away from the enemy army and avoid retaliation. Okay, done. After the arrival of the Scalpel Squadron, they both had a bead on the Thunderfire Cannon and fired through the Knight into it, only putting 1 wound on the gun, meaning that they have to suffer its retaliation next turn. The missions that we rolled for the BAO for the Dark Eldar was destroy an enemy unit, which they were unable to do, and to capture Objective 2, which they are not going to do. In the meantime, the Space Marines need to have a unit within the enemy deployment zone, and they need to destroy 1 enemy unit as well. So, let's move on to Space Marine turn 1. The Space Marines advanced towards the flank that had the Scalpel Squadron deep strike in, not advancing fully but committing. The Space Marines opened fire on the Dark Eldar forces, attempting to annihilate them and winning the game on turn 1. Luckily, the Dark Eldar forces were unscathed, and both Venoms were forced into jinking by orbital bombardments and shooting from the mighty Knight. So as the Dark Eldar start their second turn, turn 2 Dark Eldar, we have reserves to come on. So, we have the Void Raven Bomber. Now, I am suffering -1 to my reserves, thanks to Evan's Warlord trait, but my Autarch gives me +1 or -1, and then the Archon's Warlord trait, Labyrinthine Cunning, allows me to re-roll it if I so wish. So, Void Raven Bomber needing a 4+. Oh, cocked. It comes in. I'm going to allow it to stay in. Both Razorwing jet fighters, 4 pluses, both arrive. The Archon Warlord with his Blasterborn arrives. Eldar jet bikes with Autarch do not arrive, and I'm okay with that. And 3 Venoms with blasters guys in them. I will attempt to re-roll these 2, and I'm knocking -1 on that one. And I'm going to keep 2 off. 1 is forced to arrive. We're moving on to Dark Eldar turn 2. The second Dark Eldar turn, a lot of the reserves arrived. I was able to put a lot of pressure on the bike squad that was right in front of the brunt of my force, and also threaten the knight, forcing him to split up. The flyers focused. The Void Raven started by firing on the knight that suffered no damage, while the Archon with his webway portaling Blasterborn and Haywire Grange took 1 hull point off the knight, who put the shield towards the flanking force. The rest of the army fired into this unit of bikes, wiping it out. But the coup de grace was the one snap-shooting Venom from the Scalpel Squadron, gaining first blood, killing the Thunderfire and the Tech Marine, earning 3 points for first blood thanks to the formation's special rule, allowing this Venom to move up to try and score a Maelstrom objective point by getting in the enemy deployment zone. So we're moving on to Space Marine, turn 2. The Space Marines react to the Dark Eldar attack by moving forward and splitting up. 2. Space Marine bikers with Chapter Master Warlord shot the grav guns into this Razorwing, immobilizing it, but it had jinked. But now it's still alive. It just is kind of fiery at the back. Nothing happened over here. In combat, the knight stomped all over my Shadowfield Archon.
Literally.
Killed everyone. And that Chapter Master helped out, but took a wound from Overwatch. And then these bikers shot, did not kill, they charged in, losing one of their number to a Knight Scatter from a battle cannon, and then charged in and killed the Venom. So he has received 1 Maelstrom point for having 3 units in his deployment zone, and none of mine. And I have received 0 Maelstrom points this turn as well. So, moving on to Dark Eldar, turn 3. My Archon is dead, losing the benefit from the rerolls, but I still have the Autarchs +1 or -1. I have 2 units of Venoms to arrive on 4s. They do, and I will keep them on. And I have the unit of Eldar jet bikes with the Autarch. That does come on as well, regardless. The Dark Eldar reserves arrive on the far flank, ready to put pressure on the Chapter Master and his unit. The Razorwing limped forward, was unable to see any of those bikers. But the Void Raven flew over them off the table, dropping a bomb, forcing them to jink, and killed 1 as it scattered, and they passed some jink saves. This Razorwing fired into the Knight, and the Knight passed its 4+ save, while the entire fleet of Venoms decided to fire into the Chapter Master and his unit of bikes, bringing the Chapter Master down to 1 wound remaining and 1 biker left. They fled back, but they are Space Marines and will be getting back into the fight, while the Autarch and his Eldar jet bikes have moved within 3 inches of Objective 2 to try and gain Maelstrom point for the turn. So now we're moving on to Space Marine, turn 3. This is a bloody battle indeed.
Group and move back.
The Space Marines attempt to rally their forces.
Again.
The bikers moved up, but because of their jinking, were unable to harm the Venom while the Knight also fired through the building at the Venom, and it did not jink, it just blasted into the building without damaging the little speedy Venom. The Chapter Master and the bikes rallied, moved up, killed one bike and put a wound on the Autarch, 2 wounds on the Autarch with shooting and with Hammer of Wraths, and then did nothing in combat. Absolutely nothing. The Chapter Master hit once and then failed to wound with his Power Fist. And this combat stays, meaning that this objective is contested, and I get 1 Maelstrom point for having 3 units partially within my deployment zone, and no enemy units. So, Dark Eldar turn 4, and the Void Raven Bomber arrives once again.
Go ahead.
The Dark Eldar shift their attention to the opposite flank, ready to deal with the last remaining mobile threat. That is the Chapter Master and the biker unit on the flank, as well as the Knight. Okay. Void Raven Bomber moved in. The Iron Shield saved the Knight once again.
Yeah,
the Venom fleet moved to the other flank this time, securing Objective 1, hoping for a Maelstrom point. The Rex disembarked, an AP-1 Flamer killed 1 of the bikes, and then the entire rest of the shooting killed the Chapter Master and the remaining bikes as Venom poison surged through their veins. And this Venom boosted from the far flank all the way to this side, ready to participate later in the game. While in combat, the Chapter Master cut down the Autarch and killed another of the bikes, and the last remaining bike is now fleeing from the battlefield. Moving it on to Space Marine turn 4.
Okay, so he's going...
The Space Marines attempt to gain as many secondary points as possible. The Space Marine Knight fired into both of these Venoms, doing no damage with the stubbers against that one, and shaking and putting 1 hull point on that one that jinked, that saved it from the brunt of the firepower. The Chapter Master in 1 wound, and the 1 remaining Sergeant boosted back to the deployment zone to help gain their Maelstrom point for 3 units in their deployment zone, meaning that we've both gained 2 objectives this turn for killing an enemy unit. I hold Objective 1, and he has the units back in his zone, keeping the Maelstrom objectives tied at 3-3. So now we're moving on to Dark Eldar turn 5. This could be the end of the game, and the Razor Wings arrive once again. The Dark Eldar air superiority proves to be key in trying to take out the Knight, as well as continue to put pressure on the remaining bikers. Being careful that the objectives are still in the air. Shooting from this 1 Venom killed the last Chapter Master and the Sergeant that were in the backfield. Both Razor Wings and the Void Raven fired into the Knight, only putting 1 hull point on him. And then the Venoms boosted up to cause some havoc around his Emperor's Will objective, as well as the Rex. So we're moving on to Space Marine turn 5. Could be the end of the game. It's the Knight against the world.
Here.
The Knight against the world tries to do damage. The Knight's turn. The Knight moved around the building. He charged into the racks and smacked them all, blew battle cannon and blew up this Venom, killed a whole bunch of Kabalite warriors. That 1 Kabalite warrior is fearless, so he just sits there. And he is consolidated to deny me from capturing said Emperor's Will objective. So, will the game continue on to turn 6? And it doesn't.
It does not.
The game is over. We will be back with a full count. Okay, so end of the game. Dark Eldar take primary by taking Emperor's Will and contesting with a Venom. Evan should have shot the little rack unit to kill the front guy that was contesting and then charged into the Venom. But we'll talk about that in the tactical corner in order to tie primary. Secondary is tied in Maelstrom points. We've got 4 points and 4 points. And the Dark Eldar win tertiary as well, getting the 3 points for First Blood, Linebreaker, and Warlord, thanks to that Venom over there, to the Warlord from Evan's army. So, a Dark Eldar victory. Evan, any last comments?
I've never played against an army that reserves everything since about, I'd say, at least maybe 5th edition. It's something new, and it's something you don't expect.
Yeah, the only way it works, of course, is with a Scalpel Squadron that has to deep strike turn 1, so you can keep everything off the board and bring them on in reserves. The use of the Autarch and the Warlord trait Labyrinthine Cunning really brings this army to the forefront.
It does.
It was really nice to see all the flyers on the table, and this is just 1,500 points. I feel it works better at 1,850, but I will talk about that in a later army list review. So stay tuned to the Tactical Corner, where we will discuss the tactical choices made in the game. Thanks a lot for watching. This is Skari, sharing, subscribing, liking, commenting on the videos. Till next time, this is Skari, your grateful host, out. Stay tuned for the Tactical Corner. Oh, and welcome to another Tactical Corner. So, today we're playing against 1,500 points of Biker, White Scar, Space Marines and a Knight ally. 2 Chapter Masters, a very hard-hitting army. Trying an army concept that was all null deployment, a throwback to 5th edition Dark Eldar, which meant that I didn't deploy a thing, and it relied on the use of reserves in order to come on the board at this particular time that I wanted to come in to do the damage to the enemy army. Now this, of course, threw Evan off a bit, and I was okay with that. The whole dynamic of the list is very gimmicky, but if it works, it'd be a lot of fun, and it relied on keeping the Scalpel Squadron alive for that first turn. I got very lucky to get First Blood with the Scalpel Squadron, considering the Thunderfire Cannon was a perfect choice for me to target. The Knight proved to be quite troublesome, making most of its shield saves and using the large cathedral in the center to gain cover. As for the objectives, I felt the Space Marines split up too much, and I was able to pick at one squad of bikers at a time, doing terrible damage with my poison weapons and slowly whittling them down because of their slow model count, which meant they weren't able to bring their forces to bear on one section of my army and overwhelm it. On the contrary, I ended up overwhelming his. The missions themselves, at the end, Evan made a mistake. He could have tied the primary mission, which would have meant a lot less of a loss. I would have only won through the tertiary points at the end of the game, because everything else was tied down the middle had he killed the Rex and then charged the Venom that had contested his home objective. Thanks a lot for watching. Stay tuned for the next battle report.